Gnosis, a path to the stars. Gnosis, my friends, is direct personal knowledge rather than intellectual knowledge. Gnosis is about gaining insight into the real nature of humanity, the divine nature within the self, which leads to deliverance of the divine spark within humanity from the constraints of earthly existence. My friends, the path of Gnosis is the path to the man God, or the solidification of the immortal nature within you. Okay. We're going to be drawing from the Corpus Hermeticum and some just the Trinity by which divinity is known, the Trinity of Gnosis per se, the path there. First off, some quotes to inspire us. The knowledge of God is what saves you. Hermes Trismegistus. Make your ear attentive to wisdom. Incline your heart to understanding. For if you cry for discernment, lift your voice for understanding. If you seek her as silver and search for her as hidden treasure, then you will discern the fear of the Lord and discover the knowledge of God. Proverbs 2. The excellence of soul is understanding. For the man who understands is conscious, devoted, and already godlike. Hermes Trismegistus. Let's talk about gnosis and knowledge before we get into the threefold path that's so important in the modern day. If you guys are enjoying this video, this mystery school dive in, hit that like button and share this video on a platform or with someone you think it will impact. Opening the doors of the invisible is essentially gnosis to me. Gaining knowledge, gaining understanding, gaining union with this unseen reality, the good, right? The creation and the creator. Understanding the hidden laws that are operating out here. Hermeticism is really about the study of nature, right? And understanding the unseen elements that are at play, the monad, per se, right? Corpus Hermeticum, the foundational text on Hermeticism, is all about gnosis. It's all about coming into union with God and the knowledge of God. And essentially the Corpus Hermeticum embodies this threefold path of the philosopher, the mystic, and the warrior. And we're going to get into how these three open the doors to the invisible. Book 10, the key. The vice of soul is ignorance. For the soul who hath no knowledge of the things that are, or the knowledge of their nature, or of the good, is blinded by the body's passions and tossed about. This wretched soul, not knowing what she is, becomes the slave of bodies of strange form in sorry plight, bearing the body as a load, not as the ruler, but the ruled. This ignorance is the soul's vice, not as the ruler, but as the ruled. But on the other hand, the virtue of soul is gnosis, or knowledge. For he who knows is good and pious, and is still, while on earth, divine. For it is possible, my son, that a man's soul should be made like unto a god, even when he's still in a body, if he doth contemplate the beauty of the good. Right? So Hermes is talking to Tot, his son, and describing the path to the stars, the path to gnosis. And by gaining, basically this insight through these sacred texts, through teachers, and contemplating the beauty of the good, contemplating the cosmos, gnosis slowly dawns upon man, okay? The vice of soul is ignorance. When man is ignorant, he cannot be fixed in anything. He is tossed about by the body's passions, by the ups and downs of this life. He is a pawn in constant reaction. And when we're in ignorance, we cannot have reverence. This is really key, right? Through knowledge, through direct experience of the mystic, through the philosopher, and the hermetic knowledge, and this contemplation of the beauty of the good, or the beauty of God and his creation, all of a sudden we start to see and understand why reality is happening, how things are occurring, right? And our mind begins to be illuminated. And through that, we gain this reverence for this unseen mechanism that's working, this reverence for the reality, the good, right? And that reverence draws the soul upward. That vision, that perfect image draws the soul upward towards it. Fire ascends onto fire, but earth descends onto earth. And here's the thing that's discussed in the Corpus Hermeticum is like, man is at this crossroads. He can either progress and evolve towards his divine nature or devolve back into deeper levels of mortal nature, right? And we have this divine gift of reason and mind. And to illuminate our mind, which is the spark of divinity, with the knowledge of God, leads us upward on the path to the stars, which is man's ultimate destiny, right? Hermes Trismegistus opened up the Corpus Hermeticum with a really, interesting saying. And essentially, to paraphrase, it was, with a heavy body, and like a sober heart and a sober mind, I lay on my back and contemplated the creation. I contemplated God. Thoth opened up the Emerald Tablets with a very similar saying. And it's like when we can retract the senses from the body, from the physical world, and really contemplate creation with a sober mind, right? A great vision can dawn upon us. This is where the vision of Poimandres came into play for Hermes, right? And he entered into this knowledge of God. It's a really interesting idea, and that's going to get into the mystical path, which we'll talk about here. But ultimately, Gnosis is attained through the study of the mysteries of God, and through that vision and contemplation that you are drawn upward towards it. In Book 4, Hermes says, God's image hath been sketched for thee, as far as it can be. And if thou wilt attentively dwell on it, and observe it with thine heart's eyes, believe me, son, thou shalt find the path that leads above, the path to the stars. And that image shall become the guide itself, because the sight, the divine sight, hath this particular charm. It holdeth fast and draweth onto those who succeed in opening their eyes, just as a magnet draws up iron. So those who attain this sight, this spiritual vision, glimpses of Gnosis, are drawn upward as a magnet draws up iron, right? This is why Gnosis is so important. And I mean, really, this is the deeply hidden knowledge, my friends. Most of the Gnosticisms, the Cathars, were killed. This is the Gnosis that Jesus was teaching to his secret sect, This kind of knowledge is what was, taught in the Egyptian and Greek mystery schools, the path to Gnosis, the hermetic knowledge, right? The Corpus Hermeticum is largely based off this idea. So, the philosopher, the mystic, and the warrior. These are the three aspects of one's character, the archetypes within, through which and by which divinity is known. Okay? There's many different archetypes and aspects of ourselves that are asked of us in the modern day. There's so much going on out there, right? But ultimately, these three are the qualities of God that lead to the revelation of the reality of the good, right? The philosopher is the mind, the mystic, the heart, the warrior, the body. You must have all three of these. Okay. The philosopher, the occult practitioner per se, contemplates what is seen, right? He learns about physics or the elements, natural sciences. He studies his own self, acquires earthly wisdom, right? He studies nature. And through that study, through the study of the sacred books and philosophies of old, he gains greater insight into what is unseen. By understanding what is seen, what is before him, what is experiential in his life, he can gain insight into the unseen world, into that plane of Gnosis, and that vision that draws you upward, right? And this is through the mind. The mystic, the path of the priest, is one of the heart. It's devotional. The path of mysticism, my friends, is a polarity to the path of the philosopher. The path of the mystic, right, is solitary, while the path of the philosopher probably has gnosis talks, probably creates, shares, speaks, learns, right? The path of the mystic is solitary. It's about direct experiential communion with the reality, with God. This is what yoga in most Eastern traditions like Zen Buddhism is about, is the path of the mystic, right? And that path alone doesn't quite work for a lot of people in a modern day, okay? But the path of the mystic, is sitting on the mountaintop and, meditating. It is withdrawing all the senses through yoga, and coming into connection and communion with the supreme reality. The path of the mystic is absolutely necessary because, yes, you can think and abstract and, let that vision draw you upward. But that path of the mystic is what lets you touch the reality itself, to come into communion with it. But the philosopher directs your eyes there. The warrior. The warrior is through the body, and it's about creating integrity in your character, right? Developing courage and strength and discipline and willpower, right? Without these things, you cannot go through the initiations required to really become a magician, to become a philosopher, to be a mystic. If you don't have courage to let go, to go through the fires of tribulation, the warrior is necessary in this world to make your way through the complex social and economic situations that we find ourselves in, right? If we do not have the warrior in check, how can we create a grounded earthly life where we can actually pursue philosophy, pursue mysticism, right? If we can't get our finances in check and our relationships, or we're thrown here and there, right? Because we're not fixed in the truth, right? We're not we don't have courage to protect the other qualities, the other archetypes, the other virtues. We won't go anywhere. You need courage. You need the warrior. And the warrior learns and comes into, the knowledge of God through action and service, through the expressing God. Through his expression, he gains his reflection, right? The warrior is like karma yoga in a way, right? And action and service. The mystic, right, is about devotion and direct communion. The philosopher is obviously about wisdom and knowledge. Okay? These are the three aspects by which divinity is known. The philosopher is quite important to my friends. The study of these sacred books, right? The understanding, because the deeper we understand ourselves and the macrocosm, right? Like that vision really drastically changes the way you live. That kind of knowledge changes everything. It changes where you are drawn to, because knowledge, my friends, creates reverence. You cannot be reverent of something that you don't understand, right? Let's say you're going through pain in your life. One with knowledge has reverence, lets that fire of pain burn, has reverence for, what the space it's opening in your life, reverence for the illusions that are fading, because he knows he's getting closer, he's running upward towards God, right? Without reverence, we can't have reverence without understanding of the greater mechanism and faith of what is happening in our life, right? So through the study of this kind of knowledge, through philosophy, you gain reverence, right? Which makes you fixed which helps you gain degrees of fixedness in your immortal nature, right? And that reverence, right, trickles down into the mystic who practices and cultivates that reverence, and that reverence leads you into direct communion with God. But furthermore, my friends, whatever we revere, whatever we worship determines where we end up. This is so important. Think about most people who are ignorant. They revere money, fame, celebrities. They revere what is truly bad, they revere as good. And that reverence, right, determines what they become, right? Basically, the God you worship determines what you become. And most people don't realize they are worshiping a God of materialism, of heathenism, of pleasure, right? The idols have fallen, per se. So returning to and discovering the creation, through philosophy and through mysticism, through reverence, that leads you on the path to the stars. Reverence, my friends. So much could be said here. Tons of notes on Pythagoras and reverence and philosophy. Maybe that's for another video. Let me know if you want to see that one. So reverence trickles down into the mystic, which guides the mystic in the path of the heart, right? And that reverence brings you through the heavenly gate, right? You go through the gate, and then you return as a heavenly messenger, per se. And this is where the warrior comes into full embodiment, because now he is there to serve and act in service of something greater that he knows, that he understands, right? The warrior helps you get there, but is also what you return with, right? My friends, so much could be said here. Drop a comment if you want to go deeper into the Corpus Hermeticum. I love this book. It is so great. It is quite cryptic, but it is deeply revealing. This is Reality Files. I'm Kristian. If you want to go deeper into the Mystery School teachings, check out my playlist on the Ancient Mystery School or my other channel, Immortal Truth. Thanks for being here. Hell yeah, my friends. Keep seeking. May you find the path to the stars.